OMG's boys, girls, in-betweeners. How you doing? Red Gambit here, and I'm back with a wish list of changes for JURI in Season 4. Now, some of you will remember that I have done videos in the past talking about wish lists for characters, and those were a little bit tongue-in-cheek. There wasn't too much serious about it. I wanted to sit down and spend a good little while not only covering JURI as a character, the history of the changes for her, things like that, the changes that I want and whatnot, but I really feel like this needs to be a much more in-depth look than what we've done in the past. So let's go ahead and pretty much go ahead and jump right into that right now. Now, I will say before I begin that obviously I am biased as a JURI main, but I'm going to try and keep this as realistic as I can. So it's not going to be like I want JURI to have 200 extra hit points, I want to be plus on everything, I want it to do way more damage, I want it to teleport around the screen. Nothing like that. I'm going to try and have sensible, reasonable arguments in this video. So call me out on that if you think that anything I'm talking about here is too off the wall, if you will. So before we talk about JURI's buffs in Street Fighter V, let's talk about JURI in games in the past as a whole, because I really feel like Capcom has never really known entirely what to do with JURI as a character, because in terms of design, in terms of how she's actually built from the ground up, she's very unconventional by Street Fighter standards. Before she'd actually been put into Street Fighter 4, there'd never been a store-based character in that game. There'd never been an anti-Zoner kind of character. She was very new, she was quite groundbreaking on a lot of fronts in terms of her mechanics. So with that said, she started out being very low tier in Street Fighter 4, and throughout each version she received some fairly minor buffs in each version, AE, 2012, Ultra, things like that. Now, there was a lot of talk at the time that, especially in Japan, that she was a character who was being slept on, but she never actually saw any serious tournament placings until Ultra Street Fighter 4, where II took her to top 8 in EVO. Additionally, even though she did receive majority of buffs in each iteration, she still received some nerfs, which were quite perplexing. Probably one of the biggest nerfs that she got was she lost the ability to perform her dive kick while jumping backwards in Ultra Street Fighter 4. So it was kind of a mixed bag for JURI. Most of them were buffs, there were a few nerfs in there, but she did get better overall as a whole. And by the time Ultra Street Fighter 4 rolled around, she was considered to be quite tournament viable. Now, after Ultra Street Fighter 4, we had the red-headed stepchild of the Street Fighter series, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, where JURI actually had the opposite problem because she was godlike in that game. JURI stood head and shoulders above the rest of the cast. Her combo potential for a Street Fighter character in that roster was almost unrivaled. Now, this is the part that's going to really bake your noodle if you didn't actually know this. Throughout the game's fairly limited lifespan of about 18 months, the game had 3 major balance patches where JURI was consistently nerfed in every single patch. She was that strong when she came out of the gates. They had to nerf her every single time, and in spite of that, she was still incredibly strong. She was at the very least a top 5 character, despite Capcom's best efforts to reel her in. So this is where I'm kind of going with the whole idea that Capcom don't know what to do, because she's either too weak or too strong in each game that she's released, and that kind of ties into Street Fighter V, because JURI launched at the tail end of Season 1. Now, despite this being a little late for people to really gauge her true potential, she was definitely viewed as a character who was not particularly strong by the time Season 2 rolled around. Now, Season 2 brought with it a number of changes that did favour JURI, but also some fairly baffling buffs like nerfing the range on her fireball while in V-Trigger 1. Now, in spite of the buffs that she did receive in Season 2, by this time her low damage output and, frankly, terrible frame data had really cemented her position as possibly the worst character in the game. It was really a race to the bottom between JURI, Fang, and Alex to see who could be the worst character in Season 2. Now, in turn, Season 3 brought with it some more puzzling changes. JURI received much needed buffs, but that was combined with more nerfs, like reducing her fireball damage, as well as the lazy global changes like the nerfs to the V-Trigger and crush counter scaling, which hurt her already poor damage output even further. Now, as a result of all this, while no longer being categorically the worst character in the game, to this day, many tier lists place her as around bottom 5 or bottom 10 at best. Now, before we can talk about how to buff JURI, I want to go and spend a little bit of time on the JURI is being slept on myth. This is a dirty little thing which is pervasive throughout the internet that I've noticed, that there's a small portion of the community who, like in Street Fighter 4, are very adamant with the idea that JURI is being slept on. Now, if you don't know what that means, the term basically describes how a character has a lot of untapped potential that no one has actually discovered yet. So let's just go ahead right now and dispel a few of those myths, so hopefully people are on the same page as everyone else in terms of what needs to be done to improve her once we know what the baseline is. Now, myth number 1. JURI has an amazing normal throw range. You're going to hear from a lot of people that JURI has one of the best normal throw ranges in the game. This is actually very untrue. JURI has a very average throw range. It's not bad, but it's average. This myth stems from the fact that JURI has a neutral pose with her leaning on her back foot, standing away from the opponent. Due to her main body mass being far from where you're actually standing, as opposed to the hitbox which covers the area around her body, it looks as though she's throwing you from much further away than she actually should, when in actuality, she can't throw from any range further than a lot of other characters. You can go into training mode and test this for yourself. She really does not have anything particularly unusual about her throw range compared to other characters who try to throw her. Now, I've talked about how JURI has very poor damage output, but some people will tell you that JURI is actually capable of outputting some high damage. They'll say that the damage is actually very respectable in her combos, and that is actually true. But there is a caveat to that, and the caveat is that it's under very specific circumstances. There are most certainly some combos where JURI can actually output almost 400 damage completely meterless in a single combo. But as I said, it's very specific. You're going to need a jump in to start the party that's going to be a heavy punch or a heavy kick, and have multiple fireballs stored as well as corner positioning. The other problem with this particular combo, or ones like it, is that in order to perform the combo, JURI has to commit to it. Often you'll find that JURI will have to burn resources like EX bar or fireballs to make the combo safe if it's blocked, so you've thrown a bunch of resources into a combo just to hit confirm it. This means that she needs to retreat and look for opportunities to store resources, which will leave her vulnerable in the process. Even if the combo that we're talking about actually connects, she still needs to retreat to restock, which leaves her in the same vulnerable position. So can JURI put out good damage? Yes, in very specific limited circumstances. Most of the time you're going to find her combos are either quite short and do poor damage, or they go on too long and thus the scaling really kills them. To surmise on this point, when JURI is fully stocked, in limited situations, she is capable of outputting very good damage. However, with little or no stocks, JURI is a toothless tiger who needs to run from her opponent in order to gather resources and make herself a threat. The payoff for these small damage windows is just not worth the huge amount of work you will need to do to put into preparing for them. So where does JURI stand in Season 3? Now, despite what I've listed above, I've never considered JURI to be a bad character, not even in Season 1. She's actually quite good, and that's the problem. She's good. She's a good character in a game full of great characters. Characters who have mix-ups, resets, endless plus frames, and pressure. JURI has none of these things. She's just a good character who is extremely honest about how she has to win a match. Beyond that, JURI is a character who currently is extremely neutral dominant. Her game plan is to utilize her long pokes, good mobility, and range of tools to keep the opponent where she wants them, fighting the match on her terms. JURI is immediately struggling against characters with high mobility, characters who cannot be locked down, or characters who are able to pressure her consistently. JURI has no ability to pressure her opponent outside of V-Trigger 1 due to her extremely poor frame data. Once JURI finishes a block string, a confirm, her opponent knows that it is always their turn, and there is no way JURI can end a block string that is not at least -2. JURI's biggest problem is that her offense is built around the concept of performing long, flashy combos in a game that punishes you for doing long, flashy combos. So here we go, how to fix JURI in Season 4, how to make her a good, balanced character. In my view, with a few small changes, it would really work wonders for making JURI more viable in Season 4 without making her broken or necessarily top tier. First would be to remove the atrocious pushback on Standing Medium Punch. Standing Medium Punch is JURI's only plus frame normal that isn't a light button. However, it has a huge amount of pushback both on hit and on block. It is impossible to link Standing Medium Punch into almost any other button. This is probably because it is designed to work in conjunction with Standing Medium Kick, which it links into and has a limited combo potential. Removing the pushback on Standing Medium Punch so that JURI has a legitimate +2 pressure tool to harass her opponent with or set up frame traps would be a huge boost to JURI's neutral game. Secondly, remove the hitbox flicker on Tensinren. For For some obscure reason, in a game where characters routinely throw fireballs and teleport around the screen, a designer at Capcom felt that Juri's hitbox should flicker on and off when performing Tenshinhan, or her DP if you prefer. This is probably because her legs are sometimes not in opposition to the opponent as she's flying through the air during parts of the animation. Meaning that if you want to be super realistic about this, they're not actually getting hit by anything. The reality of this matter is that it makes her Tenshinhan an inconsistent anti-air tool without spending meter, because sometimes you can read on a jump, respond accordingly with Tenshinhan, and still get hit out of it anyway. Honestly, this is just a stupid design choice that should never have been in the game in the first place. Thirdly, buff the damage on Juri's fireballs. Curiously, Capcom actually did buff the damage on her fireballs in Season 3. They then reverted the buff back to normal damage in Season 3.5. While Capcom felt that a tool which is unsafe on block unless it's Light Fua, which is just still -2, and has to be stored before use was doing too much damage is a mystery. Fourth, this is actually a quick one. Just make Seku overhead +1 on hit. Currently it's -6 on block, which I'm actually fine with as that's fairly universal. That's not the problem. The problem is that it's also 0 on hit, which means even if you land the hit, you're not at advantage. Honestly, outside of trying to end a round with this move, it's pretty much worthless in every other regard. Lastly, rework V-Trigger 2 or make EX Fireball +2 on block. Currently, V-Trigger 2 is considered to be hands down, categorically, the worst V-Trigger in the game, and we have the polls to prove it. Juri's V-Trigger 2 steals EX meter from her opponent. However, it only steals when she is not jumping, not throwing, not being thrown, not being hit, and not being knocked down. So unless you are grounded and hitting your opponent or keeping them in block stun, your gauge is ticking down for nothing. Now, while in V-Trigger state, Juri does not gain any frame advantage, given how Juri has a whopping total of 4 buttons which are plus on block, 3 of which are lights, and no specials, not even EXs that are plus on block. Her chances of keeping her opponent locked down and in a defensive position during the whole duration of the V-Trigger is almost 0. Additionally, the meter also drains EX from the opponent at a rate which is comparable to what they gain while being hit. So even if you do manage to land a big combo while the gauge is active, they will actually gain meter at the same rate that you steal it from them, meaning that their gauge does not decrease, but it also does not increase, it just stays where it is. And lastly, even if you manage to gain a significant portion of meter from the V-Trigger, Juri has no use for it. As mentioned, Juri has no EX moves which are positive on block. Outside of keeping a bar as a wake-up reversal deterrent, or very specific scenarios, Juri actually spends very little meter. It's not uncommon to find yourself sitting on 3 bars in a match with no real way to spend it effectively. As such, V-Trigger 2 needs to either be reworked entirely, or EX Fireball should be +2 on block to give her a reason to actually spend meter outside of a confirmed combo. And that's it, that's all the things that I think would need to be changed to make Juri a much more viable character in Season 4. Now we've talked about the things that I do want, let's talk about the things that I don't want, because there's been a lot of suggestions flying around over time, and some of them I definitely do not agree with. The first one being medium kick fireball being an overhead. Now, the medium kick fireball does have an animation that makes it look like it should definitely be an overhead, but it's not. And while this change would be nice, the move itself is also -4 on block. So throwing this one out and hoping that you get an overhead during a block string, I feel is a bad risk-reward proposition. Sorry guys, I just don't think it's worth it in this case. Next would be starting the round fully stocked. This is another request that I actually hear a lot. You would start the round like Ibuki having all her kunai stocked, whereas Juri starts the round with no fireballs stocked. Again, while this would be a nice addition, and I definitely would not oppose it if it was something that was put into the game, I don't feel like it's a really big advantage because you'd burn through those 3 stocks pretty fast, honestly. Once you burn through them, you're back to being in the same position where you have to look for opportunities to store fireballs safely. The biggest difference between Juri and Ibuki is that Ibuki starts out with several kunai, whereas Juri would only start out with 3 fireballs. Honestly, I feel like 3 stocks is just not enough of a buff to really go begging for from Capcom in my opinion. Getting her dive kick back. Now this is the last one, and honestly, Capcom have not shied away from giving characters new moves in different patches in the past. Cammy got an air throw, Zangief got a kick reversal, things like that. So, a lot of people asked for getting her dive kick back because it was one of the most fun parts of her character in Street Fighter 4. And honestly, in low levels you could just throw it out fairly haphazardly and get some solid damage from it. Problem is that its only real consistent use was just punishing projectiles on reaction, and we already have a V-skill for that. So while getting the dive kick back would be nice, it doesn't actually fulfill any purpose that her V-skill doesn't do already, and honestly does a better job of, considering it has fireball invincibility, which her dive kick would not. Now to wrap things up, I've talked about the things that I would like for JURI which I think are realistic and reasonable to ask for. Opposed to that, here's a couple of things that I would really love to see put in the game but I feel have almost zero chance of actually happening. Firstly, give JURI better follow-up options or crumple status of her standing heavy kick crush counter. The reason for this is that JURI is a character who actually possesses two buttons that cause crush counter, her standing heavy kick and her crouching heavy punch. Sadly, both of them are negative on block, being -4 and -5 respectively, and only one of them is actually suitable for footsies because crouching heavy punch has no forward hitbox. Now if you do land a crush counter and it's anything other than absolute point blank range, JURI's only follow-up option is a like confirmed combo, which may not even result in a knockdown depending on what resources you had at hand at the time. Additionally, because standing heavy kick is -4, several members of the cast are able to easily punch this move on block even at maximum range. Additionally, standing heavy kick has a 14 frame startup, which makes it quite slow even by most heavy button standards. Given how many cast members can cause significant damage off a crush counter without needing to store resources to achieve something as basic as a knockdown, or being punished on block, JURI should be given access to better damage for having to take such risks. However, this would actually be a really powerful buff to her neutral, and Capcom have proven that they are extremely reluctant to give her anything other than the bare minimum when it comes to buffs. Now the other thing that I would really love to see JURI get, but I sincerely doubt she will, is a mix-up during Feng Shui Engine. JURI's Feng Shui Engine is effective and decent in Street Fighter V, but it pales in comparison to her original Feng Shui Engine. In Ultra Street Fighter 4, JURI could perform an overhead mid-block string that she could pull a combo off of, netting her a reset and a fresh combo in the process. Again, this would be incredibly powerful, and I can't see Capcom giving this kind of tool to anyone not named Cammy or Akuma. Alright guys, so that's all my thoughts. That's everything I have to say about this. Like I said, we have covered this a little bit in other videos, but I wanted to try and make one comprehensive video that just covered everything before Season 4 comes out, because you can bet that when we find out what changes JURI is going to get, if any, it's going to be open season. I'm going to make a lot of videos regarding that and my thoughts, and whether they're good or bad. I'm not holding my breath personally. If you want my honest opinion right now, before we've seen anything about Season 4, I think Capcom will change JURI very little. I think that they will probably give her a couple of buffs, a couple of nerfs to balance that out, and say, yeah, look, she's fine now. You got your buffs, you got your nerfs, she's balanced, go, stop bitching for another year. So, and that's just my perspective. I really feel like I said, this whole video covers the fact that I don't think they know what they're doing with JURI, but that's just the way things are. So I'm not holding my breath, but I wanted to get it out there from a person who lives and breathes this character. These are the things that I think need to be changed about her. But that's it for now, guys. As always, kisses, hugs, belly rubs, and we'll see all of you very soon.